So, guys, I'm doing a video series called AEW Underrated where I talk about a wrestler in AEW and I talk about how they're underrated. And I also will talk about, their potential and also just like some booking ideas and, where things have gone wrong. And ultimately, I don't believe in bashing AEW. You have to give constructive criticism. Like I remember my art professor saying, is that if you see a piece of art that sucks, saying it sucks is not helpful. Saying why it sucks is helpful. And like, share, and subscribe, and also give me some wrestlers that you feel are underrated on the AEW roster, and just and why and what can improve. And I'll just definitely consider that for a future video. So I do want to talk about Max Caster, and he's one of these wrestlers that I feel is very underrated. And I'm not like the thing that he did with this greatest wrestler alive thing, because with Max Caster, I will say that his biggest strength is the raps. And actually, there's OTR Central who has done a lot of great YouTube videos, and he's talked about how with Max Caster, who would you rather be? Max Caster making controversial raps, or would you want to be somebody like, Will Ospreay wrestling hour-long matches, or John Moxley, bleeding himself and doing hardcore stuff, or being somebody like Nick Gage, just going through tables and whatever. You would rather want to be rapping and getting some, attention that way, to save your body, to give yourself more longevity. The same way you look at MJF, who can do a variety of who can do a variety of things. And I would also just say that in addition to that, what I would say with Max Caster is that also too that I don't mind him wrestling, but he also has like character and personality, and that's very helpful. Like he's almost like an Enzo Amore in a way. But I also feel with Max Caster, he could be a very great Ring of Honor wrestler. I think that if he needs to improve his arsenal, if he needs to improve his moves, he can always like learn and grow as he's wrestling with people. And you have a show in Mexico City, and he looks very appropriate. You can do Bandito versus Max Caster. This annoying guy from New York City. Like maybe he dressed up like Donald Trump, or he has like Luchador Trump or whatever, and he pisses off people, then he gets his ass kicked by Bandito. There's so much money in that, bitches. So there's always a thing with Max Caster where he can kind of take the smart ass thing to a level that gets him a lot of attention. He can take a controversy creates cash thing to another level, really. And also too that there is such a need for him, because when you look at WWE, you look at John Cena, and you look at him saying, oh well, a kid gave me the middle finger or whatever. Well, John Cena is limited. He's not gonna say fuck this or your motherfuckers or whatever. Really, he's not gonna go that far because he's limited in what he can do. Or when Cody Rhodes said, hey Rock, go fuck yourself, that was very limited. He's not going to talk like Jerry Springer, but with Max Caster, you feel with him that he is somebody that will unload. He will spit that hot fire. He will be like a Dave Chappelle. He will be Rick James, the habitual line stepper. There's that in Max Caster, and that needs to be nurtured. That needs to be celebrated. And the other thing about Max Caster that's great is that there's a story with Anthony Bowens. Like, if I was booking AEW Double or Nothing, I would do Okada versus Anthony Bowens, or Adam Cole versus Anthony Bowens, and then Max Caster screws him over, and then you have Max Caster versus Anthony Bowens at AEW Double or Nothing, no, at AEW All In, or you do something where you enter them into the Casino Battle Royale, and maybe they both win or something like that, or maybe Anthony Bowens wins or Max Caster wins, and then they have a match, and it's like, okay, well, even though Max Caster won this contract, they're going to have a match that's going to be a street fight, and then whoever wins it keeps, he either keeps it or Anthony keeps it, something like that. There is a story that you can tell with Anthony Bowens, and it could be a story of, Max Caster having a big ego, or Max Caster being like, what, I just need to start growing up, really. Like, I'm somebody with a lot of energy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm a little insecure. So that's why I act big and loud, really. Like Max Caster turning, into, you know, I know an intention horror to growing out of that and saying, hey, you know what? It's family that made me big. It's the fact that we just didn't want to go broke. It's the fact that you know what there isn't a lot of diversity in professional wrestling. There isn't a lot of people taking risks like WWE. That's why we're in AEW and we made it work. And I need to go back to like helping my boy who was very close on the cusp of accomplishing his dream of being an AEW champion. There's a story within that. There's such a story within that. Or there's a thing where you can take Max Caster and put him on Ring of Honor and make him cause so much controversy. That's the only time you see his raps. If you will go to the Ring of Honor pay-per-views, or if you watch Ring of Honor television and then, or watch Collision and they have like maybe one or two Ring of Honor matches on the main card. There's so much with Max Caster that you can do, really. So I really think that that's why he's so underrated. He's not as full potential, really. So these are all of his benefits. But the detriments of him is that the greatest wrestler alive is a bad gimmick. If it's getting you home over, then I can shut the fuck up, really. But the reason why it's bad is you're doing what AEW likes to do best. They love their 48-hour film project company. And what I mean by 48-hour film project is they can't stop themselves with dumb comedy. The same way when you watch a 48-hour film project movie, they have a lot of silly comedy in it. There's too much silliness. And I also think that people laugh with him. So it's almost like, it may kind of put him in a box, really. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to keep on doing this when there's more of a story that you can tell, getting to, a longer match or getting to a great match with Anthony Bowens where they beat the hell out of each other at All In. Like, I think that would be a really great place to kind of like have them have a match and really just have a hardcore match, or even like a good opening match, like a good 20, 30 minutes, and like a really big near fall whatever match. There's so much that they can do to make them big stars, really. So I think that's one thing that is that, they don't put him in a serious bubble, and he may not want to be in a serious bubble. I think the next big thing is ultimately him losing a lot. Like he was automatically, he was getting near falls and he was going through a lot of shit when he was wrestling with other wrestlers than Anthony Bowens. So you're almost like saying that, okay, well, Anthony Bowens did everything, and that's not the case. And then also too with Max Caster is that I think they beat the Young Bucks one time, and they also beat other wrestlers. So now you're saying that really he's just so nerfed, really. So that's not good, And then also too, if he beats Anthony Bowens or if he beats another wrestler, it buries that wrestler. So like I said, what would happen if he gets a 2 count on Bowens? What happens if you do my idea of putting him in Ring of Honor? He gets a 2 count on Bandito, or he gets like a 3 count on Bandito. The referee doesn't see it, or he cheats and he gets a 3 count Bandito. It doesn't help, really. So the burial of Max Caster is what's not working. And I think the last thing that I'll say that's really bad about him is he's not been on television. He was one of the people in AEW that made it watchable. He's one of the people that people pay attention to. And actually, I'll say this, that Max Caster and Anthony Bowens winning their first tag team title was why I traveled to over 50 AEW shows. And why I'm going to Mexico City, why I'm going to All In, Double or Nothing this weekend, why I'm going to All In Texas, why I'm going to Forbidden Door, why I am going to All Out in Toronto. One of the reasons why I got my passport was because of Max Caster and Anthony Bowens and what they've done, really. So people want to see this. Why take it away, really? Why take away something that's working, really? So like I've said, I really just think that if you want Max Caster to shine, number one, put Anthony Bowens on Dynamite, and then put Max Caster on Ring of Honor, and then also put Max Caster on Collision, and have the raps, have the controversy, set up matches like with Bandito in Mexico City. Imagine, like as I said, Anthony Bowens, dissing the Mexico crowd, talking about Trump, pissing people off, and Bandito just, whips his ass, really. He does what Rey Mysterio did to Dominic. He takes off that belt and he spanks Max Caster with that belt, saying, hey, you know what? You took it too far, and that's what we do in a Mexican household. We check our kids. Since you want to be a kid, we're gonna check you. There's so much you can do with Max Caster. Imagine if, and as I said, in All In, you have Max Caster, you have in Double or Nothing, you have Anthony Bowens versus Okada. Nobody's seen that match. Or Anthony Bowens versus Adam Cole. Nobody's really seen that. and then he wins, but then Max Caster distracts the referee. Bowens loses, and then you have a match at All In, Bowens versus Max Caster, and then you do something like where Max Caster might get like a roll up, or when the referee's not looking, it's not going to kill Anthony Bowens. You have like a final match at All Out, really, where that's more of a hardcore stuff. Or you may say at Forbidden Door, it's like a pick your poison. And Anthony Bowens is going to pick an opponent for Max Caster, and Max Caster is going to pick an opponent for Anthony Bowens. And then at All Out, you kind of blow off their feud, really. And then they go in separate directions. And you put Max Caster on Ring of Honor for a while. Then you put, like, Anthony Bowens on AEW Dynamite for a while. And then, maybe you do, like, Max Caster with the ROH title versus Anthony Bowens. That could be something. But like I've said, it's just the bad booking that really is fucking over Max Caster. He's definitely a very underrated wrestler. There's so much potential in there. And honestly, too, if you want NXT to shine, really, when Max Caster's contract is up, you bring him to WWE. You want to do something where, you want like Raw and other programs to shine, really. You have Max Caster do all of his raps. You tease and maybe during pay-per-views, he's 14 MA, and then he's like PG on regular shows, really. So, like I said, he's definitely very underrated. He's very, very overlooked, and I really would say, one of the most underrated wrestlers on the AEW roster. Goes down to bad booking and then just not consistency with his presentation of him.